Hello everyone, this is the Parks Academy, where we discuss and celebrate all things theme parks related. We focus mainly on Disney parks and resorts in both Anaheim and Orlando. My name is Paige.
My name is Steven.
And today we will be continuing our Park Icons miniseries.
Yeah, we decided not to give up on it quite yet. So we have 3 more things that we're going to be talking about. Maybe 4. Probably not, but maybe. It depends on like how many icons we can come up with. But we thought there was 3 that were kind of like, I don't know, living in the shadows, or at least one of them could have been argued to be the main icon, which is what we're talking about today. You know?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. What are you excited about this week? You got something?
I do. So mine is from this past week. Now that I have more free time, I've been watching some shows I've been meaning to watch throughout the school year, and I watched A Small Light on Disney Plus, which, if you're not familiar, is about Meep Geist. She was the woman who helped hide the Frank family, Anne Frank, and her family, and some others as well. And really from her perspective, from Meep's perspective, and it was just really well done. I think it was 8 or 10 episodes. It wasn't super long. I watched it in just a few days, and it was so good. Disney Plus, I think it was actually from National Geographic, which they're partnered up with Disney Plus. So it was a really, really good watch. I've never read The Diary of a Young Girl, but I am familiar, obviously, with Anne Frank and the Holocaust just from other things that I've learned in school and from other readings. But this show was really, really well done. So I would highly recommend. I would assume most of our listeners have Disney Plus, and if that's something that they're interested in, I thought the casting was great. The story was really touching. So
good.
Yeah, that's what I was excited about.
I've been working when you've been watching it, but I've kind of popped in and out, and it looks like it's well done, the production anyway. So that's cool.
What are you excited about?
Okay, so last weekend, not this weekend, but last weekend, a listener wrote to me on Instagram and said, Dominic, a listener, they said, hey, we were listening to some of your episodes, and a couple, like, I don't remember when it was, but I mentioned that I was excited about this game, Block Blast, that I was playing on my phone. And they were like, if you like that, you need to play the Disney Emoji Blitz game. And I downloaded it, and it is maybe a problem because I really like playing it, and I kind of play it whenever I have a few minutes to spare, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, you've been nonstop playing that game.
I know. I feel like I should probably stop. What do you think?
Well,
we can like air it all out here.
That's up to you.
Our daughter seems to really like it too. She says, I try, and then she comes over and takes my phone and tries, and then she gets like 0 points, but she likes it.
She thinks it's fun to look at all the little Disney emojis.
It is fun, yeah. She likes it when she's Mickey Mouse or Goofy on the game, which is funny because I just unlocked Minnie, so I'll have to surprise her with that one later.
Very cute.
You know? Cool. So before we get into the icon we're talking about today, I just wanted to quickly say thank you to our sponsor, Deep Cut. We'll be mentioning them a little later, but of course you can get 10% off your first order with the code TPA10 at checkout. And also, just a little front matter, we would like to say that we appreciate everyone who listens and all the kind words and everything you guys give us. And if you would be willing to hit us up with a nice review and rating on Apple Podcasts, that is always much appreciated, and definitely helps our show with visibility and rankings and stuff like that. I guess the only final thing before we get into our topic is, like almost everyone in the universe, we did jump on Threads this week, and that's been kind of a fun little thing. It's a very like non-toxic, almost like conversational community that Instagram rolled out. You're not on it yet, are you?
I'm not, no.
Are you any plans on checking it out, or?
Probably not.
Yeah, it's okay. I have it for my personal account, and it's okay good, but I like it for the podcast. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, I haven't jumped on any new social media in probably 10 years.
Yeah,
maybe
so
more.
I think that the reason that I was so willing to go on this one was because it is like an alternative to Twitter, and I haven't really been on Twitter in a very long time. And all the other new social media seems like they're for Gen Zers, kind of, you know?
Yeah, we're not TikTok
And this
people.
is like not that at
Yeah,
all.
for
So,
sure.
a lot of brands are on there though, and it's kind of insufferable.
That's true. That is true.
Um, okay, cool. Well, we are going to get right into talking about, I'm just going to say the Sun Wheel, even though it's not technically its name anymore. Okay, so we're talking about the Sun Wheel. Did I say Fun Wheel at first, or did I say Sun Wheel?
I think you said
I
Sunwheel.
think I did.
I'm pretty sure you did.
So when we were choosing, well, I'll be honest, when I was choosing park icons to highlight, I chose Grizzly Peak, because it really is one of the standout things at DCA. But I think that maybe some people may not even really know exactly what that is. Like especially if you haven't really been to Disney before, if you to Disneyland before, maybe the first thing you think of when you think of DCA is the big Ferris wheel with Mickey's face on it. I don't know if that would be what you thought of beforehand, but it's kind of like saying I don't know, I almost like equated to saying that the icon in Animal Kingdom is like, Expedition Everest and not the tree.
Right.
The two could easily be conflated with each other because
Yep.
they're both similar in scope and scale and stuff.
Right.
Even though the Tree of Life is very clearly the main icon. But I wanted to circle back around on this because I felt like there was things to say about it, and then I quickly realized that there's actually more to say about Paradise Pier. And by the way, I'm gonna interchange Mickey's Fun Wheel,
Sun
Pixar Pal-A-Round, Sun
and the
Wheel, Paradise
Sunwheel,
Pier,
right.
and Pixar Pier. Like I'm just gonna switch those in and out. So it's not that I don't know which one's which or what it is now, but I'm not gonna continue clarifying myself. That's just gonna be too obnoxious.
Right, because it's undergone those changes.
Right. So yeah, to me, the interesting thing is that there's less to do with the actual Sun Wheel itself and more to do with Pixar Pier. And so basically, if we take a look at, there's obviously a really long storied, history behind DCA, and I don't need to get into every little bit of it because that could be an entirely different episode. In fact, the history of DCA could be an entire episode series, frankly. But originally, Paradise Pier in Disney California Adventure was going to be Surf City. And as they were kind of working through that idea, it actually turned out that they couldn't use that name because two cities in California had protected the name with like a copyright, basically, and that's in Huntington Beach in Southern California, and Santa Cruz in Northern California. They didn't want Disney to use that because it was part of like what they were using. So Surf City was like a intellectual property of those two
Makes
locations.
sense. Yeah.
And so basically, when California Adventure was first conceptualized, Imagineers had envisioned, a pier similar to those that you might find up and down the California coast. So like, I don't know, like, was it does Malibu have one? Santa Monica Pier is what I'm thinking of. Santa Cruz, things like that. And what's really kind of crazy to me about it is that Paradise Pier is actually the largest land in California Adventure, and it offers like a wide array of, if you don't know, entertainment, dining, rides, sideshow kind of attractions of like carnival games and things like that. But when they were putting together DCA, they ran into a bunch of issues. And, first of all, one of the things that they really wanted to do, and this will kind of be the extent of what I say when it comes to, the actual park, but the original idea was to do something that was going to be kind of like Disney Seas in Lagoon. I think it was in Long Beach, California, is what they were going to do that.
Okay.
It's going to be like this was before Tokyo Disney opened up.
Mm-hmm.
And, that ended up not working and it kind of failed. And so as they were like mulling over what they were going to do for a new park, they came up with, the Disney California Adventure, which we talked about, of like, one of the things about Disneyland versus Disney World is like when you go to Orlando, you're going for Disney World, but if you go to Southern California, or if you're coming out to California from other places in the country or the world, you want to see, you want to see the Hollywood sign, you want to see San Francisco, you want to see the, sequoias and national parks and things like that, or Monterey or whatever, and just see it all. And so one of the things they were saying is like, why don't we just make every part of California accessible to our guest here in one
Right.
park?
So they can kind of get the whole scope of California by visiting DCA.
Yeah. So they had this big expansion plan ready to go, and it kind of ended up being this huge issue with the city of Anaheim and also just budget constraints in general. A business owner named Joe Slinsky, he actually found out that his business was going to be taken over by a parking lot after like the plans were released to the public to look at and everything like that. So there was a lot of issues and like oversight on how they were going to actually build up this new park. And then, of course, the failure of Euro Disney was a huge hit for the Disney company. They had to scrap a ton of plans of what they wanted to do, and things in the park that they were going to make just almost be like this mix of Tokyo Disney Seas or a Disney Sea area mixed with like Westcott and all these cool things. They had to really scale it back. And then to make matters worse, Frank Wells, who was the president of the Walt Disney Company from 1984 to 94, he died in a very tragic helicopter crash. And in the same year, Michael Eisner had a quadruple bypass surgery, which really kind of shot his momentum for, drive for a new park and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so part of how we actually ended up even getting Paradise Pier to begin with, or just DCA in general, is Paul Pressler. He became the new president of Disneyland Operations, and he came from the world of merchandising and cost-cutting retail practices. And he basically had to help Disney save money by scaling back DCA. So he was in charge of shutting down a lot of things in Disneyland during that period of time. So they had this big, beautiful idea for Tomorrowland that ended up just turning into a big nothing.
Mhm.
So if you think about like why, the People Mover tracks are still there, but there's nothing else, it's Paul Pressler. There's a lot of things that go back to him.
Okay.
He shut down the Disneyland Electric Light Parade. He shut down the submarine voyage, and he was responsible for it was under his site as the president, right? He was responsible for the collapsing roof of the Tiki Room due to lack of upkeep because they just figured it'd be fine.
Oh no.
So there's like all this junk that happened, and it just bad, 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 bad. So after all this happened in August 1995, the Imagineers and the Disney team, or maybe just the Disney executives, they had a retreat in Aspen, Colorado, and their Long Beach Disney Sea, which had a $3 billion budget, was shrunk down to a 1.1 billion. No, excuse me, a $600 million budget. So
Jeez.
it was like, 75% of the budget was just shrunk down and brought down to nothing for them to have to build out, what we know as today as DCA. So Surf Beach became Paradise Pier, and its focus, regrettably, was cheap games and rides. So I don't know if you remember this or not, but there was, and again, Pixar Pier could be an entire Paradise Pixar Pier could be an entirely different episode just on its own. But like, they had the Maliboomer, they have the original, Sunwheel, California Screamin', the Orange Zinger, which was like what the Silly Symphony Swings are now. This incredibly tacky dinosaur sunglasses hut, a burger, French fry stand from McDonald's. It was like really tacky and really bad. So the original Sunwheel, it was when it was original. It was an original day attraction. It was the focal point of Paradise Pier, and it was situated right next to the Maliboomer, which is no longer there. But that was like one of those rides that shoot you up in the air and
Right.
go
I've
back
seen
down.
pictures of that, but I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, one of the very few, if not the only, rides like that have shields in front of your face, so the neighbors in Anaheim can't hear you screaming
That's great.
and bother them all day. It's one of the few rides in Disney that does offer barf bags,
Also great.
which is because of the swinging ride mechanics, which I'll talk about in a minute. It is technically 150 feet high, although the ride itself is 160 feet, but it is technically below sea level.
Ah.
So that was for them to basically for Disney to be able to, avoid having to put a light beacon on top of it for airplanes, which we've talked about before. It would make it very ugly and kind of take away the whole vibe.
Right.
At the time it was opened, there was a lot of different things going on in Paradise Pier, but the sun face kind of looked like ornamental art from the 1970s that was influenced by Mexican folk art, just like a really big kind of smiling sun. Um, and the California sun remained stationary as the ride rotated behind it. For the ride mechanic itself, before you boarded the sun wheel, you get to decide whether you want a tame, conventional Ferris wheel ride or a thrilling ride in a gondola that moves and swings. This is an exact quote from the Disney website back in the 90s, okay?
Mhm.
Paradise Pier's Sun Wheel takes guests on a Ferris wheel ride high above Disney's California Adventure. Now it's just Disney California Adventure, but at the time it was Disney's apostrophe S. You can play it a bit safe by riding on one of the cool stationary gondolas, or for a real thrill, climb into one of the purple and orange gondolas, which ride an interior rails so they slide inward and outward with a centrifugal force of the wheel's rotational movement. So, really boring description.
I've never done that one because you don't like it.
I don't. Maybe we'll do it next time.
I think it sounds fun.
So one thing I didn't know is that this is one of two. This is only one of two Ferris wheels in the world that are like this, and they both reside in the United States. It was actually modeled after the Wonder Wheel in Coney Island, which opened in 1927. Are you familiar with this? Have you heard of this thing?
No, I haven't.
So I've never been to Coney Island before.
Neither have I.
I've been to New York City, but I've never had a reason to go out to Coney Island.
Right, we've never done the Coney Island thing.
So it turns out that the Sun Wheel was actually a very faithful copy of this historic Wonder Wheel at Dino's Wonder Wheel Amusement Park at Coney Island in Brooklyn, New York. The Wonder Wheel is still operating, and it is named an official New York landmark as of 1989. Just like the Disney version, the original has 16 swinging gondolas that slide around the track as the wheel rotates, and 8 stationary gondolas. The Wonder Wheel has a diameter of 150 feet, so very similar, while the slightly larger Sun Wheel has the diameter of 160 feet, like I had mentioned before. There, of course, is no sun face on the Wonder Wheel, and of course, we know that there's no longer a sun face on the Sun Wheel either. Although the wheel itself is still in DCA, and it's the exact same, as before, with different paint jobs and different gondolas and things like that. One of the things that we kind of like to go over when we are talking about these icons specifically is the lore of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so because Paradise Pier is just kind of was kind of built as like a nothing sort of park, there's very little that we can actually glean from any kind of lore that they have about it. The only thing that we know for sure is that there was technically an owner. His name was Gustav Tinkerschmidt. He was a German traveling showman in the 19th century, and he came to own the Paradise Pier outside of Los Angeles in California. That's literally the description of him.
That's the whole lore.
Yeah, I mean, his name can be seen on some windows and things like that, but
Okay.
it's a little tacky. But when they make, so it used to be Mulholland Madness was Goofy's Sky School.
Okay.
That's what it used to be called, and basically it was like you were on Mulholland Drive, and there was these really terrible, tacky cardboard cutouts of cars that had crashed through it and stuff like that.
Right.
At some point in the 20th century, the article goes on to say, he let the Toon Goofy use a portion of Paradise Pier as, quote, a flight salvage yard to reclaim, repair, and store damaged and unused airplane parts. Goofy went on to use this portion of the pier as his destructive sky school and to make egg deliveries for the company Shell, which is a pun.
Right.
Not great.
Yep.
Not great. I mean, they basically were like, we're gonna talk a little bit about IP, but they're basically like, we're gonna force an IP here because early days there was very little IP in DCA.
Yeah, hardly any.
With, believe it or not, the exception of A Bug's Land. I mean, that was kind of it.
Yeah.
In so many ways. I mean, they had the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror opened up later, but you just didn't have barely any IP in the park, like at all. It was a really weird time.
All about California.
Yeah, really weird time.
Yeah.
And the Muppets were there, of course, but it just
It felt kind of pseudo Disney.
Exactly. So, I had mentioned there's barf bags in there. It's an original attraction. It's the focal point of Paradise Pier. Um, the Sun Wheel actually ended up closing in mid-October 2008 after a half-year makeover to become Mickey's Fun Wheel in May 2009. It had a similar... we had the smiling face of Mickey Mouse like you would see similarly to like the cartoon introductions where he kind of flies forward. And that was in place of where the sun face had been. This is actually a screen that they printed on. I think it looks great. And it actually preceded the 2010 opening of World of Color. And what the World of Color did was it kind of gave fans a reason to stay later because they weren't really staying late at the park. There was no need to do that necessarily because of the lack of attractions and how cheap and lame, Paradise Pier was.
Right. There was not a whole lot going on, and there was no nighttime show, right?
Yeah, I think the World of Color might have been the very first one,
Mhm.
or if anything, the first one of any kind of note.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, just like a real kind of bust over there. I'm looking something up really quick because I wanted to clarify something here. So, of course, in 2008, around the same time, we were kind of, they were kind of working on this big revitalization of Paradise Pier, and that also included the opening of Toy Story Mania. In 2012, the park was officially rededicated by Bob Iger, which was necessary. This is around the time of Cars Land, of course. You've got the new Fun Wheel. You've got, I guess that's kind of about it at the time, huh? Not a lot of...
Yeah, but there was, I mean, even just including those things, it felt much more Disney at that point.
It did. I think so too. I think that the fact that it was a giant Mickey Mouse face really made a big difference. Although on California Screamin' previously, what you would see is the loop was the head of Mickey Mouse, and then there were two ears with similar style behind it.
Right.
I recall as a kid, I didn't go on the ride because I was convinced that you did triple loops. You would do like through the head, through the ear, through the other ear, and then back, and it really freaked me out. So I never rode. I didn't ride it until I think like my second trip there in 2003.
Yeah.
But that was my first upside down roller coaster, actually.
Oh.
Yeah. But yeah, so it kind of stayed that way. I don't really remember what rides were there exactly. I do remember that, as you're walking down toward the boardwalk, there were these really kind of classic posters of people kind of hanging out on the beach in sunny Southern California, all this kind of stuff. And I feel like Mickey's Fun Wheel was the best version of that, like, of that Ferris wheel.
Yeah.
Because now, as of 2018, it's Pixar Pal-A-Round.
Sure.
Paradise Pier began its transformation in 2018 to Pixar Pier, and Mickey's Fun Wheel closed and became Pixar's Pal-A-Round in June 2018, with new artwork on the gondolas, but there was still the giant Mickey Mouse, just huge face sitting there on the side and the center of the wheel. In 2014, LED lights were added to it. And what I found really interesting about this whole thing is if you think about, because everything that Disney does has to be some kind of a business move. I mean, they do things for their guests, but at the end of the day, they have board members to report to.
Right.
Stuff like that. So, we know that Pixar Pier was stale and not, or Paradise Pier was stale and not great, and just had like really boring, terrible attractions, food stands, things like that. And I think that Mickey's Fun Wheel and Toy Story Mania were really big components to like helping revitalize it. And to me, anyway, I think California Screamin' was still really great, even though they did update it to the Incredicoaster around the same time.
Yep.
But one of the things that I read, I don't know how true this is, but logically it all kind of makes sense and feels like it snaps together. Opening up Pixar Pier in 2018 was kind of almost like a move to alleviate some of the pressure from Galaxy's Edge opening up the following year, right?
Sure.
So you've got a brand new Star Wars area opening up that's going to be way more immersive. It's not a facelift on an existing, you know, on an existing park or
Land.
existing land,
Right.
right? And so they basically, turn Paradise Pier into a dumping ground for IP where you have like, the small fry and like angry dogs and just all this weird, like, the adorable snowmen, snow cones, like all these
Mhm.
weird kind of silly
Buzzy's
stands
churro
and
stand.
yeah, and like all these games and that are fun and like fine and serve a purpose. But it definitely kind of after a while just became like a big dumping ground for like Pixar IP with the Lamplight Lounge and all that kind of stuff. I feel like it's very disjointed there, if I may. It feels very strange, but
I think it's because Pixar, you have old Pixar,
mhm,
you have new Pixar, and it's all intertwined.
right. Well, and with like for instance, the chicken box thing, like that's from a Toy Story short, Small Fry.
Right.
Like I don't I've seen it once, but it doesn't really ring true to me as like real IP that makes sense from the films.
Mhm.
And then one of the arcade games I think is from Luna or La Luna,
Oh, okay.
which is the Pixar short where they like catch stars.
Right.
You know which one I'm talking about?
Yep.
And the guy that looks like the dad from Luca is the fisherman.
Uh-huh.
Um so yeah, it's just kind of I don't know. I think it's sort of strange, but the strangest thing to me about it is that they made the decision to like I'm on board with this, but I also think that like it was weird that they decided to keep Mickey Mouse's face on the side of the fun wheel when it's now Pixar's Pal-A-Round.
Sure.
All about friendship and like the way that it works is you have like, across from like exactly across from one another you have like Woody and Buzz and Heimlich and Flick and Emil and Remy and
Mhm.
Mr. Incredible and Mrs. Incredible, like so on.
Sure.
Um, so I don't know. I think it's sort of a strange choice, and the way that it's sort of gone from this weird sun wheel that was like from a California postcard, which was the whole idea to begin with, to a really nice sort of old school style of Disney cartoons with the silly symphony swings and the Mickey's Fun Wheel and all that. Strange choice to go to Pixar Pal around. I
Yeah.
still wouldn't. I don't think I would want to say it. Like if we go, I'd refer to it as like Mickey's Fun Wheel.
Yeah, we do still call it Mickey's Fun Wheel
Yeah.
because it looks on the outside like Mickey's Fun Wheel until you get up close and then you see all of the Pixar stuff around it and
And if you're in line, had the voice, it switches between Miguel from Coco talking about the safety instructions in Spanish, and then it has Dory giving the safety instructions in English. But it's a very obvious ripoff of Ellen DeGeneres. Like it's
right.
actually not her. So
Right.
it's very uncanny valley where you can kind of understand it, but like also it's not really Dory.
Right.
So it's very strange to
Yeah.
listen to.
Yeah, that was funny last time we were there.
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, that's sort of my spiel about it. Again, there's not that much, and but my biggest thing is I just think that the Pixar angle is very strange. It just we've been there together, and I just wasn't. I had a very hard time sort of understanding it.
You know what? So I've talked on the show before about how I like DCA better than Disneyland. Um because it feels like a more grown-up park.
Hmm.
And one thing that I really like about DCA actually is Pixar Pier because I like the Pixar elements. You don't get Pixar everywhere throughout all of the Disney parks.
Right.
You see a Pixar movie or a character here and there, like,
Hmm.
um,
Astro Blasters, seeing Woody and
uh,
like Frontierland or whatever,
correct. Or Toy Story Land.
buzzing. Yeah. Right.
Like there's occasional things, but I
Hmm.
feel like Pixar really has most of its representation in DCA compared to all of the other Disney parks,
Sure. Yeah.
including Inside Out, which is one of my
Hmm.
favorites.
Yeah. They
You
have that
can meet
Inside Out
joy
right
and
there.
sadness,
Yeah.
and they have the little attraction there with all of the emotions, and then there's a little store with Inside Out. So I think the smart thing about doing Pixar Pier is that gives them so much room to consistently update
Hmm.
and add.
Yeah. I
Because
understand that.
Pixar is consistently making new films, not
Hmm.
all of them
I was
great.
gonna say arguably some of them are not really great anymore.
And so you see that they're not always adding those in based
Yeah,
on them
yeah.
not doing well. But I also think that some of them that I really have liked have gotten added in, like Inside Out, for
Mhm.
example. And I saw something recently that they added a turning red gondola onto Pixar Pal-A-Round.
I didn't see
Did
that.
you see that?
Mm-mm.
I don't
Boy, I
know.
did my research, huh?
Well, I can't remember when I saw it. Hold on, let me
Yeah.
look it up.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. One thing I will note is Paradise Gardens Park is actually still in existence. It's just beyond Pixar Pier. So if you go like past the Silly Symphony swings, past Goofy's like into Goofy's Sky School and stuff, toward like the Ariel's Grotto area, or the Little Mermaid. What I don't remember what the names of the ride is for some horrible reason. I've forgotten it, but that's actually Paradise Gardens. So I think it's funny that it's still like they kept that name in there. What do you got?
So the turning red gondola is
Mhm.
right behind the Cars gondola. It was previously a purple gondola with Wally on it.
Oh, so they got
And,
rid of Wally and Eve then.
and now it's the little girl from Turning Red.
Okay.
Um,
And then is it her and then the panda? Or who's her
I would
pal?
assume so.
Yeah.
Let me see.
Interesting.
Yep, it's her and then the panda.
Okay. I mean, that's fine. I just, I don't know. I just personally feel like, I think that I think that Toy Story Mania was a great fit there because they like custom fit a ride that was perfect for a Midway Mania thing.
Right.
But at the same time, I almost wonder if too much Pixar was just like forced in there. Like I mentioned it, it's kind of like a dumping ground for IP. And it sort of feels that way to me, but
Yeah, I
it's
think some of the games and
Mhm.
shops and things definitely are.
Yeah, I think that if I had to have my if I were to be listened to or if I was in charge of that, I know that this isn't going to be selling nearly as much merchandise because of like young kids and stuff, but I would have personally kept it as like the classic 1920s through 1940s Mickey Mouse cartoons
Right.
because that's really what they were trying to do with it where the swings or the Ferris wheel was the old classic vintage Mickey, Minnie, Donald, Goofy, Pluto, all that, and Daisy. And then you had the Silly Symphony swings, and even like Goofy Sky School, as silly as it is, still kind of fit in there with like the Goofy's how-to videos and stuff.
Right.
I almost wonder it almost would have made like more sense to keep it that, but I
Yeah,
guess not.
well, and if you think about it, think about the 6 parks in the US. There's not a ton of Mickey and Friends,
Right, exactly.
which we've always thought was interesting, and it was a big deal when Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, because that was the first Mickey Mouse attraction. Like,
Right, like True Blue Mickey Mouse attraction. We were
right,
in there with him.
right.
Um, yeah, I think that I would leave Mickey's Fun Wheel the way it is. I don't know what they would have done with Incredicoaster to be more like Mickey Mouse based, but I'm sure
Sure.
they could have come up with something. I just don't know.
Do they have the Pixar Studios place in DCA too?
No, they don't. That's
just Hollywood
yeah,
Studios.
that's just in Hollywood Studios.
Okay. That's what I was trying to think. Because I wonder if part of the reason why they did that in Disneyland is because they do have Pixar Studios out there in the Bay Area. And so that really does
Mhm.
still fit in with, you've got the boardwalks, which is very common on the coast of California,
Right.
mixed with they have Pixar Studios out
Mhm.
there in the Bay Area. I don't
Yeah.
know. Maybe that was like just subconsciously.
Yeah. Just in lieu of not being negative, which is something we try really hard not to do ever. I just think that some of the more recent changes in DCA have been swings and misses. Like I think that around 2008, 2009, they really started getting it right. And then, getting rid of A Bug's Land in place of Avengers Campus, I think was a mistake. I've never been to Avengers Campus. We haven't been there together
Right,
yet,
we
but I
haven't been.
feel like it wasn't the right thing to do.
What I feel like overall is, like Steven just said, we have not been to Avengers Campus, but it seems like DCA has lost its purpose
Yeah, it's a
of
mishmash.
intentionality
Right.
because, as you were telling us in the history, it was supposed to be you come here and you're getting the whole scope of
Mhm.
California. I think they could have kept that and still updated
Yeah.
with, a Marvel property. Who from Marvel? Is there anybody from California?
Ant-Man was in San Quentin.
Right. Well, yeah. But San Francisco.
Yeah,
right.
but yes, that takes
So
place there.
they could have incorporated Ant-Man into
Right.
they're bringing San Francisco, which I
Yeah.
think is
Yes, like,
that's
that
gonna
fits. That
that's
fits.
gonna be great.
Yeah.
That's gonna be really great. The Grizzly Peak area still feels
Perfectly
like
fine.
it
They have
fits.
Doug and Russell's like thing where you can the adventure, like I don't know if I think it's still there. But like Doug and Russell's like Wilderness Explorer Trail.
Right,
Like that makes sense.
that fits in with the Northern California,
Yeah.
redwoods and all of
Right.
that stuff.
Right.
All of that stuff makes sense. What feels disjointed is now you have this Pixar land, and now you have this Avengers land, which feels to me more like Universal Studios, where you
Yes.
have like
Right.
Simpsons land and Dr.
Yes.
Seuss, and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't feel like it's a whole California experience
Right,
anymore. It
right.
feels like you do have
Mm-hmm.
like hints of that with
Yeah.
there's, the Napa restaurant.
Yes. Yeah.
So you
The
feel like
wine
you're in
country,
wine country.
Trattoria, sure.
You still have, like I said, the Grizzly Peak area.
Mhm.
We're about to have San Francisco, where
Yeah.
the Pacific Wharf was, because
Right.
Pacific Wharf was very reminiscent of
Mhm.
San Francisco and Monterey and all of that stuff. It just feels like it's becoming a little more disjointed, and
Yeah.
that they're kind of stray away from
Mhm.
California Adventure being the vibe of everywhere you go in DCA. To me,
Yeah.
it should still feel like everywhere you go should feel like a different part
Yeah.
of California.
Because even like A Bug's Land still felt cute and fun,
Right.
Like you have, so if we break it all apart really quickly, you have like A Bug's Land, like if I go back before Avengers Campus and before Pixar Pier, you had, A Bug's Land, which was really great and a lot of fun. There's not really any good kids areas like that anymore there,
Sure.
which I think is kind of a shame. And then you had Cars Land, which we can't forget, which is like one of the best lands, I think, in any Disney property.
Yes.
But it still feels like that, Southern California, like
You're out
Southeast
west.
California, West, Route 66 vibe to it.
Yep.
Obviously, Grizzly Peak, we talked about that. Pixar Pier, which I think they should have left it as Paradise Pier and left everything alone with it. It was perfect the way it was. Maybe just add in a little more old school Mickey IP. And then the Tower of Terror, before they turned it into Guardians, was
right.
like an old school Hollywood thing. I mean, it was perfect. The thing with Avengers Campus is it feels too New York City to me. Doesn't it seem super like New York?
It feels like, so because I haven't been there, I can't say what the full vibe of it is, but it feels to me like it doesn't just fit California.
Yeah.
Because
right.
you've got,
Well,
you've got
Avengers, so the
Spider-Man.
Avengers, Spider-Man's is Queens. Spider-Man's is Tony Stark, he's got his big building up in New York. I feel like the Avengers headquarters is up in like upstate New York somewhere where the Endgame and all those movies took place. So I don't know. It feels disjointed, and I'm not really sure what to think about it.
So I'm looking at the map right now because I'm looking at an older map, and you have Bugs Land, Hollywood Land, Buena Vista Street. So you have that. You have Grizzly Peak. You have Pacific Wharf. You had Paradise Pier. You had Cars Land. So the only ones that really didn't feel California specifically was a Bugs Land.
Yeah, but yes. Yeah.
That was the only one that didn't specifically feel like a certain part of California. But it was a kids area, and so that to me is forgivable.
Right, right.
So yeah, I don't know. Those are my thoughts about the different lands, and it just doesn't feel like California anymore.
It doesn't. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to I really would prefer not to complain. I'm just a little confused as to why it is the way it is. I don't know. Avengers Campus to me just feels very, very, very strange. But again, I haven't been there, so it's very difficult for me to actually, concisely say anything about it other than that. I thought I had a question for you, and I don't remember what I was going to ask. Oh, yeah. So we have Mickey on the side of the fun wheel, just to bring it all back around. If you were to put if there was so Mickey's he's like the shining star of Disney. Who would you put on the side of the Ferris wheel for Pixar?
Well, I feel like it would have to be somebody who is super popular, or like 3 different very popular characters, right?
Yeah.
So when I think of Pixar, immediately my head goes to Buzz and Woody.
Right.
But I wouldn't just put one of them. I would probably put Buzz and Woody together. The other ones that I think about are Mike and Sully. I think Mike Wazowski would be really cute on the side of the fun wheel, just like
that
his
would be
big
pretty
old
good.
round face with his big old eye. I think that'd be really cute. I think it could stand alone by itself. I don't know. Nemo and Dory.
My first thought would have been the Luxo ball, but of course the Luxo ball's in the Pixar Pier.
Sure.
It's in the loop on Incredicoaster.
Right.
So that's out.
Right.
It's tough. It's really tough. One thing I forgot to mention too is that they have the new Pixar Place Hotel that the last details we got from it was May 25th, 2023.
Yes.
And they're taking Paradise, the Paradise Pier Hotel or Paradise Hotel or whatever, and restructuring it into a Pixar thing. So I think that it's a little strange. They're just doing like fitting Pixar into non-Pixar shaped holes. But
It seems like DCA is becoming a Pixar park.
yeah, which isn't bad.
No.
I think it'd be very cool, like standing on its own. But like,
Yep.
if you could imagine, Toy Story Land, Cars Land, and then like combine the two of them next door to each other would be amazing. You can add in like there's so many other IPs you could add in. Finding Nemo Land, stuff like that. But
Right.
who am I to say?
Yeah, I think it's slowly becoming a Pixar
Pixar Marvel Land.
Pixar Marvel Land.
It is.
Yeah,
it's like
I
Pixar
know.
Marvel Land.
I know, which is funny because those things to me do not go together at all.
No. I think that Disney should open up a fifth gate in Florida and have it be Marvel.
That would be so cool when they eventually get the rights.
When they get the rights. But I think that'd be great, Why
I
not?
think that'd be awesome.
They should just do that.
I know. That would be really cool.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is going to wrap up this episode of the Parks Academy for us today. Thank you guys so much again for listening. We appreciate everyone. You can find us on Instagram at the Parks Academy. You can find us on Threads now at the Parks Academy and on the parksacademypod.com. Again, thank you to our sponsor, Deep Cut, for supporting our show. You can get 10% off their website of your first order with the code TP810 at checkout. Again, thank you guys so much for everything. We look forward to talking to you next week. And until then, start in Canada, start in Adventureland.